Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgiana.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools for self-love and compassion to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings, triggers, and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the holidays and what information the holidays gave you this year, and how to move forward in a way that feels good for you. You can find reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving, and you can find out more about how to practice with us live on our website at wholeheartedloving.com. Before we get started, we will do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Okay, so this morning I was driving, and this practice came to me. And it was interesting because I've never used this as a practice before. And I recently, finally, after 20-something years, changed from a manual transmission to automatic. So this is why this practice got to be a thing, because with my old car, I wouldn't have been able to do this. So we're going to, you can sit, stand. Laying might be a bit more challenging with this one, but let's first just feel into where's your sense of support. What is supporting your body right now? And just so you can position yourself. A lot of times I say, oh, don't bother moving your feet, leave them where they're at. But today we need at least 1 foot on the ground. And what we're going to do is we're going to do something that would have driven my mother crazy when I was a child, which is we're going to tap our feet. And I just noticed in the car, it felt good for me to leave my heel planted, and I lift my toes and I tap. And I realize here in the house, the other way around feels better, where I plant the ball of my foot and I thump my heel. So you might want to try both. And what it's about here is finding a pace of the tapping or thumping that feels pleasant. Is there, and maybe you realize none of this feels pleasant, and that would be good information too, but is there some way of tapping or thumping your foot right now that you notice, oh, it starts bringing a settling to my system, right? I notice I have access to a deeper breath. My eyes want to close. There's a softening in me. And it comes through thumping my heel and not really through tapping my ball of my foot, which in the car, it had a different sensation, and I had shoes on, and that felt very calming. And once you've found something that you think your body's letting you know, oh, this feels sort of calming, play with it. I would say, make it slower or make it faster, or both, and notice how your body responds to it. As I make it faster, I'm like, no, we're amping. I don't want to amp up. Sometimes I might want to amp up, but I don't want to amp up.
That's a really big difference.
You notice it?
Yeah, huge. I think I started out, okay, so first of all, I'm in an office chair with like a foot ring, so my feet, like my toes can touch the ground,
Okay.
But my heels can't. So I experiment with a foot on the ground, one on the foot ring thing, one on the little foot shelf in front of me. So then I'm more in a car drivey position.
Yeah.
So then the difference between heel and toe is like a huge difference. I started out with just the typical, like, jittery, waiting for something to happen tapping.
Different, right? Different.
Yeah, like
Body
that's
feel.
unpleasant. And then I slowed it down to this sort of what I'm going to call pretending it's not the jittery waiting speed. But then it's just annoying because it's not fast enough and it's not slow enough. And then when I slow it down to a rhythmic, like, heartbeat pace, it becomes soothing. And then when I share it between the feet, like one heel and one toe, it becomes soothing.
Now I'm doing it with two. And I've like tried doing it with like thumping two heels at the same time versus one at a time.
Oh, interesting. It really gives different sensations of like speedy rushing movement, or like plodding, waiting feeling, or soothing, intentionally feeling.
Yeah. So that's what I find is so fun and exciting, is with a simple practice of tapping your heels or your toes, alternating feet, speed, whether it's, you start noticing, oh, each one of these movements and the vibration it creates, and maybe even the sound it creates, impacts me and my body differently.
Yeah.
And I can change that at any time. I can bring it into my life at any moment. This is a pretty easy thing to do, sort of no matter where you are.
Yeah.
And it has such a power to change things. Yeah. And when I noticed it this morning, I'm like I always had this inner child thing of like, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, don't make me sit still. Right? I think there were like, I don't know if this is an old Chinese cultural myths or beliefs that get passed down of like, bad things are going to happen to you if you jitter around and fidget, or like you're seen as uneducated and not classy if you can't sit in this elegant, poised, still way. But the message I got was, it's bad.
Yeah.
But when I think about it, when I thought about it this morning and I brought it in with, what we know now about the nervous system and completing fight energy and giving that energy that's within the system somewhere to go, when we combine it with what we know about, hey, a mother's heartbeat can be a very soothing thing for us. Another human's heartbeat can be very soothing. What we know in sensory processing, right, of, sound, rhythm, proprioceptive input, all of that helps us understand why something like this is such a big deal and can make such a big difference in how we feel. So I was sort of excited. I'm like, oh, and I always get excited. I'm a little dorky when I find new ways to help bring my body a soothing experience, or when I find new ways to help my body notice differences. Like I really noticed, hey, when I pick up the pace of it, like it don't feel so good. Or it didn't feel so good in the state that I was in. Like I didn't want to create that revved up feeling. But if right now I start thumping fast and I think to myself, I want to get energized, I'm excited to go do a new thing, then actually feels good.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm like, my intention and what I want and my desire is I want to rev up and energize.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move my body in a way that supports that moving of energy, creating that energy. But if what I'm needing and looking for is a settling, and I jitter away like that with this really fast pace, it creates this yucky feeling for me.
Yeah, totally. I feel that this could apply really heavily during the holidays for people at like a family dinner where there's maybe anxiety and rushing and stress, and really recognizing the impact of like how obviously just now moving our own bodies willingly and consciously in certain ways has an effect on us. That's happening all the time. You know, everybody's jitters are affecting us. Everybody's soothing is affecting us. And you might be sitting at your family dinner jittering away with your anxious foot, and you can like do something with that. Or if you're feeling influenced by anxious jittering of another family member, you can also work with that in your body.
Yeah. Right. It's really recognizing what's feeling supportive for my body right now and like what would feel more supportive.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I tweak things?
Yeah.
And that there's nothing wrong with me. If like the jittering of someone's foot is bothering me, it's uncomfortable. It's not that something's wrong with me. It's just that my system is responding and reacting to that in a way that it doesn't feel very good.
Right.
And like, sure, you could ask the other person to stop, but but there's also other ways that you could help support your system in that moment.
Right? It's working with energy, right? In that moment, their energy is wanting to do this jittery tapping and yours isn't. Then that's data to explore, right? Which is really what we want to talk about today is what information did the holidays give you? You know, how are you feeling? How were you feeling while the holidays were happening? They might still be happening for you. They might be now long gone. But what information did you garner with your body? What felt good? What didn't? How are you feeling now?
How did your body let you know what felt good and what didn't? Did you notice I had a pattern of listening to my body and not making myself wrong? Or did I go into an old pattern of making myself wrong because something that other people enjoy and find pleasant, I find horrifying and terrible? Right.
Which is so ramped up at holidays, right? Especially if you're visiting family that you don't visit often. It's so easy for all of our good self-connection work to fly out the window when we're reactivated, you know?
Yeah, like I think holidays in general add a lot of sensory input that we don't typically have. So just being human, I think we're impacted by sensory input. But if you recognize yourself as being sensitive to sensory input, it might be that much more taxing on your system, right? So it's really important to really register what's feeling good for me right now, what would feel better. And like, we're talking about in the moment, but I'm also thinking about like, do you prepare your body and your mind before you go into these places? And by places, I mean actual physical places. By places, I mean relationship dynamics, like, you know, or are you just walking in like, okay, here we go. And you're going to let yourself be like, you know, whipped around. Right. Yeah. So, and maybe you celebrate a different set of holidays. So this isn't a holiday time for you. But I think we all can get that sense of there's times in the year where we're in situations and with people that we generally aren't as often. And there's times of the year, maybe you're back in childhood homes, right? Or with people who your body has an experience with them from long ago, that sometimes we carry a lot of old body memories still, that they pop back up really fast when you come back to being in those physical places or around those people. So it's great to, when you're on the other side of it, this is sort of what we're talking about. Of course, you can notice during, that's ideal, but that's not always, we don't always have capacity to notice in the moment. And I think a gift to ourselves is to reflect in hindsight without shame and judgment of ourselves. What information did that experience give me? What does it show me worked for me, didn't work for me? What does it show me that I really want to invest in protecting or curating for myself next time, whether it's an energy or an experience? Yeah, it's all good. I don't know. It's a good land, like a gold mine.
It sure is.
For free information.
You're making me think of titrating. We do a lot of practices in our groups and online stuff where we're noticing a part of our body that feels strong and good or decent or not in pain. And then going back and forth between a part of our body that feels less good or less comfortable. And if you blow that up to the scale of family holidays and consciously take some time, like I'm talking about accruing present moments, building your capacity to be with those big feelings, like in a conscious way, knowing you're stepping into a situation that's going to be activating in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about preparing for it, it's like gather some practices that you intend to do during those moments when you feel activated. Take time to go, hide in the washroom for a minute and feel your bum, feel your feet, do a practice before you hit some kind of a peak where it's like, oh my God, I need to go breathe and be by myself for a minute. I'm going to freak out,
Yeah.
Accruing those moments and going back and forth between what feels better and what feels challenging is a good approach.
I really like that. Also really liked the reminder here. Something you said made me think of this. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that for most of us, even if holidays are challenging with family or friends or whoever, hopefully not with your friends, but sometimes with your family, because you don't choose your family and you have a lot of history with your family. I'm hoping that for most of us, not every single second is horrible. That there might be pockets of decent and there might be glimmers of good. And that's something I would really encourage us all to practice noticing and paying attention to. And that's going to be easier to do if you're willing to bring a practice like this into your everyday life, right? Non-holiday, non-family of origin related. Just practice noticing what's decent right now. And when you notice something like what's decent right now, actually, I feel like it's decent. And immediately when I looked at it, I was like, oh, it's decent. But as I sit with it, I'm like, oh, it's sort of pleasant. But it was watching the raindrops on the window.
Yeah.
Right? So if I look at that, I'm like, oh, that's a decent thing right now. And I feel my hand on the ottoman and I just be with the raindrops in the window for a moment, recognizing that's a sort of decent thing right now. And breath comes. I've accrued a moment of decent.
Yeah.
To add to my capacity, right? And then what surprised me is I realized, oh, like when I pay attention to them falling along, like just, slowly trickling down the window, that actually shifts from decent to pleasant. And now I've collected a moment of pleasant. And it's hard to have a moment of decent and pleasant with horrible and horrifying at the exact same time.
Yes.
Yeah. So practicing orienting and looking for and orienting to things other than what feels horrible or really unpleasant.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I don't want to be suggesting that everybody's holidays are just horrible. And this is a self-exploration, right? So for the people for whom holidays and family time or whatever your experience is over Christmas, for whom that's wonderful. And it might highlight things that feel missing for them in other areas of their life in regular times, dreading going home or having the holidays and all the pretty lights being over. And this is great data to be accruing about how you might want to be looking at your day-to-day existence.
Yes. And so what you're saying is notice what needs get met during the holidays for you. Right? And what does that highlight for you that maybe, hey, I want to pay attention to whether this need gets met at all outside of holiday situations, or in what way? Like, this obviously seems important to me to get this need met. What are some other ways to ensure that I can get this need met more consistently or more often in my life in other ways throughout the year? Right? Yeah. And it's possible that you experience the holidays where some elements show you that your needs are really met, and some elements show you that your needs are really not met. Mm-hmm. And again, that's just information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a confusing need this year.
Oh, what
is it? Because we're recording on, what is it, the 21st, so Christmas hasn't happened yet. I'm about to go home. There's probably going to be a mincemeat tart. I'm on keto. My mouth wants it. The rest of me doesn't want it. What will I do?
What will I do? You know what I do sometimes with stuff like that? Sort of gross, actually, but I'll try the not so gross version first. Is that okay?
I think I can guess where this is going.
I like to smell it.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I smell it and I'm like, I want to eat the thing, so eat the thing. But sometimes and I'm knowing more frequently now which things actually make my body feel really sick if I eat them. So the part of me that really wants it is very excited to have it. And then there's a part of me that's like, you're going to feel so horrible after you eat this.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, that's okay. I'm okay with feeling horrible after I eat this. I'm going to enjoy this while I eat it. Yeah. And other times the decision is, I am not going to have that because I don't want to pay the price for it after. And other times it might be, I'll have one and not 5. You know, but my other version is maybe not so pleasant to say out loud, but it's a sensory. It's another version of a sensory. Experience it in a sensory way.
Okay. A little mystery is a good thing.
Yeah, but you're talking about mincemeat pie, but this goes for calling your ex also. It's the same thing.
It's all the same thing.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
I've definitely been moments where part of me is like, oh, it'd be so nice to call and hear their voice and be in that energy again. And then it's like, that's going to feel good today and tomorrow. And in about 3 days, you know how you're going to feel. And it's going to feel really awful again.
Yeah. Totally.
And there were still many times that I'm like, screw it. I don't care. Yeah. I want to go for what feels good right now.
Yeah.
And then over time, I was like, yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. But that's where I find that we're allowing ourselves to be more human. There's no rigid rules anymore. It's just, am I okay with the impact of this choice? And this is something, I actually was talking to a client yesterday, and it was in the parenting realm. And, but I think it applies to all of us. I feel like as a parent, one of our goals is to help children learn the cause and effect of their choices without shame. Right? And help them see it's okay. Whatever you choose is fine. Obviously we're talking about things that don't cause harm to themselves or other people. But whatever you choose is fine. It really doesn't make a difference to me. And how about just notice how it feels to choose each one? Right? Or imagine if you chose each one, how might that feel for you? How might things, proceed after that? And to delight in the discovery with them of, this is how you felt after you chose that, or this is how it felt after you said yes or no to that thing. That's good information. What do you want to use that for? Right? How do you want to approach the same thing next time or tomorrow? And I feel like that's such an important life skill to teach children, and for a lot of us as adults who didn't learn that and weren't supported in learning that we give ourselves opportunity to practice that now. This isn't about whether you should eat the mincemeat pie or not, and it's a yes or no answer, or whether you should call your ex or not. This is about noticing and collecting data and letting the data support you over time.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I don't think I like mincemeat pie. What the heck is it actually? It's not meat.
No. It's fruits.
That's nasty. That's just so my opinion.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have a bite of it. Well, we're going to see what happens. You never know what I'll do. Is there anything else you want to say about?
Yeah, so taking this idea of collecting data, of like every experience we have gives us data. You know, you might want to reflect in hindsight, whether it's about your holidays or a relationship or this interaction you had with someone or a choice you made about work, school, whatever. What data did it give you? Right? And you might use a prompt of what that experience showed me was. You might use another prompt, how I want to use that information going forward is.
Yeah.
And you get to play with that and see.
Be a curious observer. Like, I like to imagine you accompanying me to life events.
I didn't know that.
Parenting me the way you do, you know? Oh, how did that make you feel? What do you want to do next? What do you think the impacts of that would be? You can be your own curious observer, or bring a mental version of Georgiana with you to your holiday events, and be able to really explore what information your body is giving you from a super compassionate, loving, reparenting angle. It's very powerful stuff.
Yeah. I'll say a little bit about this, and then maybe I'll add a little bit more. When we bring curiosity, there can be curiosity. Not all questions are curiosity.
Yes.
Some questions are loaded with a different energy, right? So it could be, well, what did you notice? Right? And what do you want to do with that information?
Get out of my house.
And some of us still have that old habit to bring that energy towards ourselves, right? So we're not talking about bringing that energy. And if you notice that you do, let that be okay. But notice, does that feel nice for you? Is it pleasant? Right? Do you want to grow that muscle some more, or are you open to the idea of growing the muscle that's a little bit warmer and softer? Well, how was that? What did you notice from that? You know, how do you want to use that information for next time? Like, so the tone and the energy of it and the intention of it is very different. It's not just about asking ourselves questions. It's really about the energy of warmth and excitement and acceptance and curiosity that we're learning to bring to ourselves, right? The energy of there's possibility to use this information in a different way for next time.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I think feels nice.
Yes. So I think when we began this work, like, I think you've been more oriented toward things that feel nice than I have, shall we say? And
is that a surprise?
I needed a more sort of clinical approach, you know? So for me, the phrase, what am I doing and why am I doing it, is very useful. And that, you know, baby steps me towards this warm, curious approach that I've been cultivating over the last few years now. But so that's cool to notice too, you know, like what line of questioning feels accessible for you, and letting that be okay, and letting that be a source of data as well. Yeah.
As long as you notice this is a supportive way of being curious, then that's great. It doesn't matter like how you use curiosity if it's supportive for you, right? I think hearing you say that, I realized there was a time in my life where that line of questioning would have worked better for me. Like when I was much more in my logical minded place.
Yeah.
And I still use that side. I think these days I'm guided a lot more by, you know, like how did something feel? How do I want to feel, right? What could be something I do or choose that would allow me to feel more of that? Yeah, or less of this other thing. I'm wondering if we can chat very briefly about different types of data, right? So one very obvious one was I got information. It showed me that I didn't like being spoken to that way, right? Or I really liked being welcomed this way when I walked in the room, right? Or I really loved how when I chose not to speak more about my relationship to Auntie Sue, she sort of let that be okay. And we changed the topic. That felt really nice, right? Or when I finished my plate because I felt bad if I didn't. right? Felt bad for the hostess or my mother or my grandmother or whoever, because in some cultures, we show love through, like, we show that we see someone's love for us by eating everything off the plate, even when you don't want to. And you might notice, oh, that showed me that the second half of that plate that I ate was me pushing past my own limit in order to please someone else, or like not have to disappoint someone or not have to hear about whatever.
Yeah.
Right. You might also have data of, oh, I noticed I avoided that person all night long because I don't enjoy the way, they ask questions about my life, or I don't enjoy the way they speak about my children. I don't know, right? But those might be interesting things to notice, right? Or I really loved that, everyone felt free to show their excitement in that house, right? And you might, like, during holidays, sometimes we're around very different people and at different locations. You might notice, oh, when I was at so-and-so's house, there was something about the energy in that house that felt so nice. I felt really comfortable there. What was that? Right? And then, like, it was the same group of people, but then we were in this house, or it was the same group of people, except this one thing was different. And I noticed I didn't feel as free to be myself in that setting. What's that all about? Right? And it could be, it's all about something external. Or I realized, oh, it's all about the story that I make up about that dude that was in that house. Who knows, right? But that's where you get to, I don't know, it's almost like a game to me. Like, oh, what did I notice?
Yeah. Yeah. I really like noticing what energies come up because of places and people, and what stories arise. Like you said, what kind of stories, well, what tone is the story depending on who I'm with or what we're talking about or where we are? What's my inner critic up to? How compassionate do I feel naturally? How regulated do I feel? How much do I feel like I need to speak in a certain way or can fully be myself?
I got flashbacks to, as a child, remembering which aunties and uncles I felt more excited to be around and which ones I didn't.
Yeah.
And, like, depending on your family of origin and your extended family and sort of philosophy and things, like, you might have felt shamed or in trouble for, like, why are you not going to say hi to this auntie or this uncle? Or, like, why do you look so grim when you're around that person? Or why don't you give so-and-so a hug? Like, you gave the other auntie a hug. And as I sit and I think about that, like, I could tell you, like, specifically why. I could tell you, like, hey, I was drawn to this auntie or this uncle because, like, this is their facial expression when they see me, or this is how they talk to me, or these are the kinds of questions they ask me. And, like, I stayed away from that person because, that's how they tend to interact with me. Or I noticed nothing. I stayed away from that uncle because I really didn't like how they spoke to my aunt. Right? Like, all that is information. Like, I'm gathering as a 9-year-old all this information. But, like, at the time, I didn't know what to do with it. And, like, I didn't really have a relationship with my parents where you talk about that stuff. Right? But such key information coming that had there been an adult who was curious in a warm way, and had we already had a relationship where it felt safe to fully express in those ways, I could have teased out a lot of really helpful information for friendships, for relationships in the future, right? Because those family gatherings tell you a lot.
Yeah. Wow. Wouldn't it be amazing to be able to go back to being 5 and get all that information and process it today?
Yeah. Right. And I noticed, like, I had one uncle, I loved to be around him because he's so playful. And, like, I felt like my parents weren't really the playful types. But, like, there were other elements of, like, being around that uncle that I'm like, that doesn't feel good. Like, you're saying things about other people who I don't really like the way you talk about other people. And so that was interesting too, to notice, hey, in one person who I generally adore, like they also sometimes behave in ways that feel really icky for me. And like, I didn't know what to do with that as a kid. I was like, okay, I guess I should ignore that and just focus on the fact that it's fun when we play together. And we probably do that in adulthood too, right? Especially if you've never been encouraged to really sit with like, hey, like, how do you want to deal with that? It would be okay if you don't want to be around that. It'd be okay if you felt the need to say something about that, right? It would be okay if you just accept that that's who this person is and you like to enjoy the parts that feel good and like, excuse yourself when it comes into those moments where it doesn't feel so good anymore. Right?
Yeah. Choices. Thanks, Gigi. Anything else you want to say about that before we do a closing practice?
The only thing I want to say is now I'm so curious what everyone's data is. What did you collect? What's the information you're collecting? Or since the holidays are not necessarily over yet, and there's going to be more holidays and more life situations, you could also like proactively, is that the word to use here? Wonder what things you want to pay attention to next time. Right? Like, oh, next time I'm really curious, who I'm drawn to first and why. Right? Next time I'm really curious, like, what's the tone that people use that makes me feel really settled? What's the energy that they bring?
Yeah.
Right?
This curiosity is such a beautiful way to get ourselves out of always and never thinking, which is always never helpful. Because it's like, oh God, every year so-and-so does this. Oh, this year I'm going to have to go and put up with this and that and the other thing. Or, this person's always magical, and then you show up and for some reason they're not magical. And like, how do you cope with all this? To explore every moment for the moment that it is a gift that we can give ourselves as well.
Did we want to also share that reflection question about like, how have things felt and what do I need?
Yeah, and how to round out your year for sure.
So based on whatever you've experienced so far, whether it's around the holidays with family or you're just thinking about more, we're closing we're moving towards the end of December, we're moving towards the end of a year. We wanted to encourage you to check in on how are you feeling right now, right? What's your energetic feel? What's your emotional feel? Maybe there's more than one in each of those categories. But what does that tell you that you might be needing in the days to come as you round out the year, as you round out the month? Right? And in what way are you willing and able to help cultivate and curate some of that for yourself, or call on people who you trust, who are willing to help you create some of that experience or some of that feel? Right. So again, it's like a different version of data collection, and then we use that information, right? How are you feeling now? And what do you sense you need in order to feel the way you want to feel, or more of the way you want to feel as we move towards the end of the year?
Yeah. And I think we're going to be talking about this. I mean, I can imagine how baffled I would have been at that kind of a question years ago. I wouldn't have known how I want to feel, right? So I think in upcoming episodes, we're going to be giving you guys some tools on ways to figure out how you feel, what areas you want to focus on in terms of feelings and needs and life action, whatever steps you want to take. We're going to be talking about different ways to look back on the year and forward on the year and to choose what you'd like to focus on.
Yeah. I'm excited because a new idea came to mind, so I can't wait to share it.
Yeah.
I'm saving it. It's not for today.
All right. Have you got a closing practice in mind?
Yes, we're going to thump, but differently this time. Because I thought, we did the heel thump. And I generally have a practice of tapping on my upper chest. But I realized that like tapping with the fingers and tapping with a closed fist and tapping with an open hand create a different sensory experience. Right? And so note it. Right? Your face said it all. Right. And there's something about the sound because you're using sort of an open palm on your bare skin, right? Like it reminded me right away of like, I'm getting spanked and I'm getting in trouble. Like, let's run fast.
It's better if I do it slowly and without the smacking sound.
Yeah.
But it's still not right.
Yeah. Right. And I realize with the tapping of the fingertips, I really like it when it stays in one spot. And like, it's okay. Like if it moves, I like it with two hands. Then it's two hands that use the fingertips. And I don't like a light tap. I want a thump.
What a wonderful thing to be able to say when somebody says, "What do you like?" Here is my answer in great detail, and it'll change moment to moment.
Yes, and like I got so much more to say about that, right? But anyways, I notice with my fist, like a gentle fist, I don't think I like it in one spot as much as like using both, and they sort of move around the spot in the space. But that's also for right now.
Try one fist doing a double thump like a heartbeat.
Okay. That's nice if I do it slow.
Yeah.
But if I do it fast, it's not nice.
Yeah.
It's like, hello, who's there? Are you there? Like, what are you thinking? It has that energy. What's wrong with you?
Wow. Man, we're so powerful in our own lives, hey?
Mm-hmm. This is related and unrelated at the same time. Obviously, these practices are going to help you connect more to like what feels good for you, what doesn't. And hopefully over time, you grow the courage to share with people, you know, what feels good and what doesn't. I just want to say with like sexual connection, if you can really get to know, like even these things that have, like there's no sexual thing to these things that we're practicing. But they're sensory experiences. Sex is a sensory experience, or that's one element of sex, right? Soothing, like co-regulation with someone, also doesn't have to have sex involved, but it's a sensory experience. Imagine if you could have answers for the people in your life who you trust to care for you, to create pleasure with you. And you could help them know what feels good for you. Oh, yeah. And like tiny nuances of like, just like that feels good, or faster, or like, you know, I don't like it quite like that, and not feel ashamed of speaking up about that. Yeah. And that you get that there's another person there just like so excited to know you, to know how they can support you, whether it's to soothe your nervous system or to create pleasure with you and for you. Like, it's a level you don't get to experience if you're checked out of your body, right? And like we've probably all been checked out of our body for some reason or another. So it's not a shaming or a judging thing. It's just recognizing as you're willing to grow more connection and awareness to your body in a way that feels okay for you, that you have capacity for, you get to discover so much more, and you get to help people love you better and take care of you better.
And it's generative. If you're able to proclaim, I love it. I'm thinking of Shay in Women's Group. Mm-hmm. She announced, there was some context where she was like, oh, I prefer like really light tickling. Mm-hmm. And, you know, immediately she's swarmed by people who are like, oh, I can give you that. You know, you want that thing? We've got it in droves.
I remember, like, maybe not that exact one, but like once I realized she liked snuggles, I'm like, I love giving snuggles. I would be happy to snuggle you anytime. And all of a sudden you have this attunement that you can bring to each other. And like this, I want this and you love to give it. look at that. It's a match.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it for 2025.
2024.
4. My head.
You're living in the future.
That's right. Another good year.
Another good year. It was a great year.
Yeah, 2 years
It
of
was
podcast.
a hard year in some ways, but overall a great year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, and we'll be here again next year and next week. As always, thank you guys for joining us. Please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.